Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be starting a new series called Chess Scandals. And where else should we begin than Hans Nieman and the scandal that rocked the chess world in 2022? If you've never heard of it, we're going to dive into it today. The first thing we need to look at is the game that happened between Magnus Carlsen and Hans Nieman in September of 2022 in the Singfield Cup. The Singfield Cup is a very prestigious tournament held in St. Louis. We've got Magnus Carlsen, who at this point is the world champion, and Hans Niemann. So let's have a look. We got a Nimso Indian defense right out of the opening. And this game doesn't get very interesting until much later because they play a main line. All of this is theory. Hans thought for a little bit out of the opening on how he wanted to approach it, but he does this, which is a typical Nimsa Indian idea. You give away your dark squared bishop, and you will probably fianchetto the light squared bishop, or just look to remain solid. And you ruin white's pawn structure. So he takes like this, does open the fianchettoed bishop, but he plays c5, striking at the center. If white takes, they lose the right to castle, so Magnus castles first. Take, queen takes, the knight comes out to attack the queen, and the queen takes the pawn. So, as they stand, they are equal, but Magnus has got these split pawns, whereas Hans's pawns on the queen side are together, and Magnus has two bishops, so he will look to activate them as quickly as he can. We get this move e5, liberating Hans's light squared bishop. It's a typical idea in these positions. The dark squared bishop comes out to put pressure on Magnus's knight and then his queen. Magnus asks what the bishop intends to do. You cannot drop back because then the bishop will get trapped. So we just get the in-between move rook to d1, attacking the queen. And Magnus does the same thing. You take my queen, I take your queen. So we get takes, take the rook, take the rook, take the bishop. And Magnus damages Hans Niemann's pawns. He damages the black structure. But in the process, he has now neutralized the two bishops advantage, and he'll be looking to make use of his pawns to try and fight for equality. But the computer does say Hans is slightly better. So we get king to f1, rook to d8, king to e1. The knight comes out, it's going to be looking to come into the position. Rook to d1, offering exchange. Hans doesn't want to exchange. The knight drops back, it hits the bishop retreats, and we get this move c4. Which takes. It sacrifices the pawn, but it now activates the black pieces. We get check, king to g7. The bishop comes out. The rook slides back because you don't want this rook coming to the second rank to pester everything, or the seventh rank rather. The rook slides in, attacking the a7 pawn. It comes forward, and now just looking to attack everything to cause Magnus problems. Or Magnus looking to cause Hans problems, rather. You can see Hans up on time. He thinks about this move, so you obviously can't win this pawn because it's well protected by the knight and the rook, but you're going to look to find the weaknesses. So by pushing this pawn became weak. It has to go forward, and we get this move g4, which is a mistake from Magnus. It is probably the only mistake he makes in the game, because he's looking to split the structure so he can win this pawn. Hans doesn't take, but rather hits the bishop, and when the bishop retreats, he brings his knight forward. It was attacking that pawn. We don't want to trade the bishop for the knight. Magnus would like to keep his bishop alive, so he pushes this pawn out the way, and the knight retreats, and the knight's dancing. And it's going to look to find a comfortable square where it can control Magnus's pawns on the king side. And here Magnus makes another mistake, rook to e7. It looks very natural. As I said earlier, you're targeting everything, but it allows rook, not Hans doesn't respond the best way. You can take this, but the best move in this position is rook to c2, hitting the bishop. You obviously still can't take, the knight is protecting that. And the only move here is bishop to b3, at which point you play rook c3, and you bother this bishop because it doesn't have that many squares. That didn't happen in the game, and we got takes. The knight got threatened. This was a very nice move. You can take the knight, but then I take like this. So we get that. The knight jumps forward. The king comes out. Check. Not the best move. But what happens is Magnus Carlsen, in very atypical fashion, if that's a word, gets into a knight versus bishop endgame where he's down a pawn. It should be holdable, but Hans Niemann just outplays him and wins the game, forces Magnus Carlsen to resign in this position. So from here, we will look forward to the timeline of what happened. So we spoke about it. Magnus Carlsen loses to Hans Niemann. Hans Niemann defeats Magnus Carlsen on September 4th, 2022. Nothing to see about that. It was a very shock victory, but nothing seems suspicious. Until the next day, September 5th, 2022. Magnus Carlsen withdraws from the Singfield Cup and leaves a tweet with the Jose Mourinho, "If I speak, I'm in big trouble." And this leads to lots of speculation, mostly that Magnus Carlsen thinks that Hans Niemann cheated the previous day in their classical chess game. Cheating off the board is very hard to do in the modern era, but Magnus Carlsen suspects that Hans Niemann did so. So let's have a look further in the timeline. September 6th, very important, Hikaru Nakamura creates a video and comments about the what might have happened on September 4th, what happened during that game, and what he thinks of Hans Niemann. And then September 7th, Hans Niemann responds in an interview after one of his games at the Singfield Cup. He describes that he had cheated in the past, but he did not cheat during that game. Obviously, he does not admit to that because he didn't do it, according to him. Uh, at the end of the day, one of the big problems, and it will come up again, it's very hard to tell if a grandmaster was cheating, especially over the board. It's really hard to prove unless you catch them red-handed. September 8th to September 11th, massive reaction. Memes begin getting made about various devices that he could have used to cheat and where he may or may have not hidden them. Anti-cheat measures at the Singfield Cup, because it was still going on the tournament, increase and intensify excessively. Players are getting scanned every day, and it's just crazy. The chess world's going ballistic with memes, and it makes front page news. Chess only makes front page news when there are massive scandals like this. September 19th, Magnus Carlsen's next tournament. So the Singfield Cup is now finished, and Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann meet again in the Julius Breyer Generation Cup. And Magnus Carlsen resigns after one move, indicating very clearly he does not wish to play Hans Niemann anymore. September 26th, my birthday, Magnus Carlsen comes out and he says that not only does he believe Hans Niemann cheated, but that he has cheated more recently than he has fessed up to, and does not wish to play him. October 4th, Chess.com released a report on Hans Niemann, and because he'd been banned in the past, they say we think he also may have been cheating in some online games more than he has fessed up to in the past, and they disallow him from participating in the Chess.com Global Championship that year. October 2022, Hans Niemann files a lawsuit suing Magnus Carlsen, Chess.com, Hikaru Nakamura, and Danny Rensch for $100 million because they conspired to blacklist him and have banned him and have slandered him, and it has resulted in his reputation being damaged, and they have no proof of his cheating. January 2023, there is a FIDE investigation, and FIDE begin in looking into the events and investigating what happened. And they get a whole committee, a whole commission. They go look at all the evidence that they had from both sides. in January, by the way. So FIDE is the governing body of chess. July 2023. FIDE's interim report comes out, and they think he didn't cheat, but they've got no proof that he didn't or he didn't cheat, and the case remains unresolved as of that point. And ongoing, it is still ongoing. I make this video, not much is being spoken about. He did do a very fiery interview with your favorite YouTuber, Gotham Chess. That was very interesting. 40 minutes long. It's a 40 minutes to an hour long. It's a very interesting watch, but it's fascinating. And that's the problem with chess. You can't really tell if someone cheated. Online, it's a lot easier. They use a bot. They change tabs. It's not changing tabs over the board. If you liked the video, if you enjoyed it, leave a like below. Comment on how I can improve these types of videos. This is the first time I've done something like this on the channel. And subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. Could always use more subscribers. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.